Most people who are trying to fix their gut health are doing it completely backwards. And if you spend the next 5 minutes with me, I'm going to show you how to fix your gut the right way for free. See, most people are spending hundreds of dollars on supplements, doing parasite cleanses, food sensitivity tests, cutting out food after food after food. Yet despite all this, they're still bloated, still reacting to foods, still exhausted, still constipated. But the good news, if I had to help someone improve their gut health and they weren't able to spend a single dollar on supplements, I'd know exactly where to start. And this is what I'm going to walk you through today. But before we get into it, I'm Matt from Physical Evolution, and I've spent over a decade helping women with IBS symptoms, bloating, food intolerances, exhaustion. And one thing I've learned in that time is most people don't have a supplement problem, they have a fundamentals problem. Now, to address this fundamentals issue, we use our top-down approach, which, as the name suggests, it starts from the top of digestion, which is actually in the brain, not the mouth, and goes through all the key stages of digestion, right down to the bottom, which of course is your bottom. So starting off in the brain, we want to look at how we're actually supposed to eat and what we do to maximize the brain's involvement in the kickstarting of digestion. So there's 3 key habits that I use, which I call the big 3 habits, and these are eating mindfully without distractions, chewing your food properly, and having a good spacing in between meals. Now, when we eat mindfully and without distractions, what happens is we get all the right sensory input going into our brain, telling our brain and telling our body essentially that food's coming, kicks out the digestive process. So I want you to think about a time you've been in a restaurant and you're really hungry, and before there's even food on your table, let alone in your mouth, you start to hear your tummy rumbling and your mouth waters as you're sort of smelling the foods in the restaurant and seeing the food being carried around. This is what's called the cephalic phase of digestion starting, which is the beginning phase of digestion. Now, as I said, we get the sensory input from the smells of the food, the sight of the food, the touch of the food even, and eventually the taste of the food as well. And this kickstarts the release of salivary enzymes, digestive enzymes, and stomach acid. All the stuff that we need to help to digest our food properly. We then move on to chewing our food properly. So of course, when we chew our food properly, we break it down into smaller pieces, so then there's less work to be done by the lower parts of our digestive system. But also the act of chewing also releases more of these salivary enzymes and more digestive enzymes, again, contributing to overall proper digestion. And finally, when we space our meals out, so I like my clients having at least 3 or 4 hours in between meals, we get a nerve impulse that goes through your digestive system. It's called the migratory motor complex, or MMC for short. And think of this guy as the street sweeper for your gut. So it keeps things moving, it causes the contraction of digestive muscles, and it stops things from sort of taking hold and proliferating. And as I said, just sort of keeps things moving and clears things out. So that's the big 3 habits, and as they relate to the brain and your digestion. The next key step of the digestive process is moving down to your stomach, and specifically your stomach acid. Now, when we look at maximizing stomach acid and making sure we're getting enough stomach acid, it begins by doing these big 3 key habits. You're going to hear me bang on about them a lot in this video. Chewing your food properly, eating mindfully, and then spacing your meals out throughout the day. But something else we can also do to increase the acidity in our stomach, anecdotally, is using apple cider vinegar. Now, to my knowledge, there's no research that supports this, but I have noticed that it has worked in quite a few of my clients, where you can have a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, dilute it in a glass of water so it doesn't strip the enamel in your teeth, and that can just improve the overall acidity in your gut and help with digestion. Now, you may be thinking, well, how do I know if I don't have enough acidity in my gut? And what should I be focusing on and thinking? So typically when we get low stomach acidity, we're going to be seeing symptoms like heavy protein foods, like steak, for example, sitting heavy in our stomach because we haven't got the stomach acid to break it down as fast as we normally would, excessive belching and burping, undigested food in the stool, and actually even reflux and heartburn. In my experience, a lot more reflux and heartburn is due to low stomach acid than high stomach acid. And this is because, without getting into it too deeply, stomach acid and the acidity produced by enough acid is actually the signal to keep the doorway between your stomach and your esophagus shut. So if you're thinking that you have low stomach acidity due to a lot of these symptoms, I'd make sure first and foremost that you're focusing on being consistent with these big 3 key habits, and then also potentially looking at adding in some apple cider vinegar diluted in a glass of water for a bit of assistance as well. We then get to the next key stage, which is your small intestine, and specifically your bile. Now, we create bile in the liver, we store it in the gallbladder, and then we squirt it into the small intestine to help to digest and absorb our fats. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned with both bile and with stomach acid is they're really important for killing off any nasties, any bugs that come into our gut as well. So whilst they absolutely help us break down and absorb our food, stomach acid more so with protein, bile more so with fat, they're one of our big defenses in killing any pathogens or bugs that come into the gut as well. So if we've not got enough bile, we're going to be having issues digesting and absorbing our fat. So typically if we're eating higher fat content meals, and this could be healthy fats or unhealthy fats, we're going to be getting symptoms like bloating and gas, particularly in the sort of the lower portion of our stomach and in our abdomen, and getting greasy and mucousy and sort of coated stools because we're not actually absorbing the fat as well as we should. And the fat that we're not absorbing, we then pass it out through our stool. Now, other than the key habits again, one of the big triggers for bile to be secreted is stomach acid being secreted. So stomach acid is one of the first things that happens in the digestive process, and this then has a flow-on effect to enough of the digestive enzymes being released and also bile being released as well. So then other than obviously being consistent with the habits and making sure we've got enough stomach acid, another thing that we can do to help with our bile flow is actually by consuming bitter tasting food or drink. So my go-tos here would be Rocket or even a dandelion root tea, as they're nice and bitter tasting and they'll help to stimulate the release of bile from your gallbladder. And then the final key stage of digestion is your bottom, okay, or your bowel movers. Now, your bowel movements and all the different kinds that we get are another topic for another day, but they can tell you a lot about what's going on with your digestive system. And some of the key areas I look at just to make sure we are having at least one quality daily bowel movement, making sure we're hydrated, making sure that we are moving enough throughout the day, looking at our fiber intake, both soluble versus insoluble, and of course looking at the things I've already mentioned, our big three gut health habits, making sure we've got enough stomach acid, making sure we've got enough bile. Because remember this, you can't out-supplement bad eating habits. Now, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you hit subscribe because next week I'll be releasing a video where we're going through the blood work and the top-down method we use with one of our superstar clients to completely fix her gut. And if you want a copy of my no supplement gut health fix, find it in the link below. Okay, so we've gone through our top-down method, but now it's time to go through some other key health habits and health areas that play a massive role in your gut and your digestion. Number one and top of the tree is stress. When we talk about finding top of the tree problems and root cause problems, stress is one of the big ones we look at because it has so many impacts downstream in so many different systems in the body, especially the digestive system. Now, chronic stress can cause a decrease in stomach acid, a decrease in digestive enzymes, and also just less blood flow to the digestive system. So it can be a massive factor when it comes to digestive health. Now, what I like most of my clients doing is some sort of nervous system regulation or stress management on most days, because we acknowledge that in modern day living, we spend a lot of our time in the more fight and flight side of our nervous system. And as the name suggests, we want to be spending a lot of our time in the rest and digest state, especially when we're looking at actually properly digesting our food. Now, the next key area is your sleep. And when it comes to sleep, stress will play a big part. But with sleep, we want to make sure we're looking at not only the amount of sleep you're getting, but probably more importantly, the quality of the sleep that you're getting. And to improve your sleep quality, a lot of this will happen in what you do in the lead up to sleep time. So looking at sort of the 30 or 60 or 90 minutes before bed and what you're doing there. We then want to look at your movement. So this could be as simple as your steps and just how much you move throughout the day, and ideally not just being sedentary for the whole day, but also actual exercise as well. So this could be strength training in the gym, this could be cardiovascular training, it could even be sport. But sufficient movement throughout the day is a big factor in actually having good digestive health and keeping things moving at the rate they should be moving. And then finally, we've got hydration. So hydration is water and electrolytes. Now, there's a big buzz in the industry right now where people are saying that everyone should be taking electrolytes. I don't think that's necessary for a lot of people because we get a lot of electrolytes, particularly sodium from our food anyway. But if you are somebody who sweats a lot because you're exercising a lot or because you're just a sweaty person, then having some sort of electrolyte supplement, whether it's an actual supplement or even just coconut water, can be a massive help. Now, it's important to remember, your gut does not exist in isolation. If your stress is through the roof, you're sleeping like crap, and you're on your butt all day, never moving, then no supplement's going to fix it. So that is our top-down method and our key health habits and health areas of focus that we start with to fix many of our clients' gut health problems. Now, whilst this approach has fixed a lot of gut health issues in the past with the clients we've worked with, we also acknowledge that for a lot of people, whilst this is a great start and lays a solid foundation, there will need to be some more nitty-gritty work and more individualized work to actually get people all of the way and fix their guts properly. And this is where our inside out method comes in. With our inside out method, we're using blood work and thorough symptom lists to work out exactly what's going on in your digestive system and with your health in a more broad sense. So some common problems that we find with people when we do this inside out method are things like gut lining dysfunctional permeability, or leaky gut as it's called, and a lot of people who struggle with gluten and fructose find they have issues around this. We often find bacterial issues like SIBO, and typically people who are getting quite strong reactions to higher FODMAP foods like garlic and onion find they have issues like SIBO. We find a lot of yeast issues like Candida, and typically these people will be getting things like sugar cravings and a lot of generalized unexplained anxiety. And we even find evidence of parasites too, which is all the rage right now. And typically somebody with parasites, they'll be experiencing your classic GI symptoms, excessive thirst, hunger, and often intrusive thoughts and waking up at the same time in the early hours of the morning most nights. Now with people like this though, So this doesn't mean that all of a sudden the top-down approach and these key habits aren't important. They are, because they lay the foundation. I spoke before about things like stomach acid and bile, giving us a protective mechanism against things that come into the gut. This is why they're so important. It's all good and well to find out that you've got a bacterial overgrowth and go to work on eradicating it and getting rid of it. But if you haven't actually looked at why that bacterial overgrowth was a problem in the first place, then at best, you're going to get some temporary relief, but you're just going to relapse. So it's very important that if you do indeed need the inside out approach where we do use blood work and use symptoms to find out your specific dysfunction, then we're also marrying whatever we do with that with the top-down approach and with those key habits, so we fix your problems, but they stay fixed. So to summarize, guys, we've gone through our top-down approach, which starts at the brain with our big 3 habits, then it gets to the stomach, then to the small intestine and bile, and finally to your bottom and your bowel movements. We then went through some key areas of health that you need to focus on to help with digestion. So number 1 would be your stress management, then your sleep, both quantity and quality. We had your movement and exercise, and also your hydration as well. And then finally, we spoke about our inside out method, the method we use when just the top down approach isn't enough, and then some deeper issues going on that need to be identified and fixed. And this involves going through thorough blood work and thorough symptom logs to work out exactly what's going on with you. So if you've been trying to fix your gut for years and had no luck, start with the top down approach and the key areas of health, because I promise you, whether they fix you or not, they're going to get you a good chunk of the way. And then if you find that you do become consistent with these areas and these habits, and you have got improvement, but you've not got quite all the way yet, well, then you know what to do in terms of finding the inside out method and reaching out for some help. And if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe, because like I said earlier in the video, next week we'll be going through an actual client case study where we look at what we found in her bloods, what we found in her symptoms, and how we actually fixed her and fixed her gut for good. And remember, if you want a copy of my No Supplement Gut Health Fix, it's in the description below.